Welcome to Webinar Wednesdays. This is a monthly series that the cooperative has been putting on since January. Each month, we're featuring one of our vendor partners and their services that they provide. Presenting for us today is Rachel Breitbach. She is a senior advisor and practice lead at FarWell. She's responsible for leveraging her expertise to help clients achieve their goals and staying up to date with emerging trends. And I'm not going to steal any more of your thunder, Rachel. The floor is yours.
Great. Thanks so much, Dean. And thanks to everyone for your time today, for joining us for the next hour. I'm really honored to be here today. I know that CCUA empowers credit unions to thrive, and my hope for our time together is you find at least one nugget that can help you thrive in the current change landscape. As Dean mentioned, I'm Rachel Breitbach. One other note is I have been part of the credit union movement for a long time. I've been a member since college. I'm currently a member of 2 credit unions. That's a story for another time. But anyway, but again, excited to be here with all of you. So let's get into navigating change, empowering yourself and your team. One question we get asked sometimes is just about the organization that I work with and am from. As you mentioned, I'm a senior advisor and practice lead at FarWell. And who is FarWell? FarWell itself is an advisory firm, and we help clients assess, plan, and execute business and technical projects. We have a very flexible and transparent process that we follow, and you can see there on the screen some of the different services that we offer, anything from strategy development all the way through implementation. And we work with a lot of credit union industry clients here. You may see a few folks on the screen in terms of different credit unions that we've worked with. And you see there towards the bottom, Cooperative Credit Union Association. So again, really excited to be here today. So how are we going to spend our time? What is the agenda? First, we're going to talk through understanding change in the change environment, then understanding resistance and how we each may resist change that we're presented with. And then we're going to dive into some strategies and tactics that you can use immediately for helping to manage yourself through change, as well as supporting others if you're a leader within an organization, either a leader of a team or just an indirect leader of others, helping to support them through change. So I'd like to start with a poll. Here you can either go to menti.com and use the code up at the top, or you can take your phones. I know there's always a danger of me telling you to look at your phone, but use the camera for the QR code and enter in how you're currently feeling in terms of fatigue at your work. How change fatigued are you? And we'll see the results come up as you all respond. All right, they're coming in. I'll give it a few more seconds. All right, the good news, we've got kind of the gamut here. The good news is, at least for those who have responded so far, some of you are just feeling mildly fatigued. A few of you are kind of in the middle. You've got about 8 who are starting to feel like it's impacting your well-being and performance, and some who are, oh boy, just overwhelmed and burnout. So I'm grateful to all of you for taking the time today to help, hopefully, with how you're feeling with change. So the first thing need to do is kind of create a baseline and understanding how we move through change. And so now I have a request, kind of a mini experiment for all of you. What I'd like for you to do is to take your mouse wherever it is now on the side of your computer and move it to the opposite side of your laptop. And then I want you to find the meeting chat click on the message and then just let us know where you're joining this webinar from today. So go through that exercise, move your mouse, find the chat, and share where it is you're joining from today. All right. Got people in Massachusetts, some in, yeah, Rhode Island. All right, now I want you to share in the chat, how did that feel being able to go through that exercise? Was it relatively easy? All right, got good, easy, easy. I got an awkward, fine. All right, good. Ambidextrous. Oh, wow. Okay, good. That's good. All right, so thank you all for going through that. The intent of that was just to share a little bit of a microcosm of a change that you may have to go through or be asked. You can move your mouse back to where you had it before for comfort for the rest. So for a lot of you, it felt relatively easy to do that, but it wasn't necessarily consistent for all. For some, it felt great. For others, maybe it was a little bit awkward or uncomfortable or just took a little bit more time in order to do the task. And that's something that we need to think about with ourselves and all of our teams, that in terms of change every day, we're having to adjust and be flexible. So I'd like to share with all of you just some change fundamentals. So in the work that we do with organizations and with people, we've learned a lot about change. And first, what we've learned is that we are wired to respond and react to change. It's part of our nature. And there's been a lot of studies on this recently. There's a science to it. Where our bodies, when we're presented with a change, automatically react and respond. It's the autonomic system of our brain, so the things that regulate our heartbeats and our breathing, that is triggered when we are presented with either a real or a perceived change. So for some of us, if you have a nightmare or a bad dream, when you wake up and your heart is racing, or you may have broken out in sweat, that's an example of that. So it's important for us to understand that our bodies are working against us sometimes in a way, and just to be aware that that is happening and that it's okay. The next thing that we've learned is that you may get a different reaction from different team members or even yourself to the same change. So you, as a leader, may think a change is exciting and you present it to your team and you get a very different response, either from your team members or even different responses within the team, where somebody is willing to adopt it early and others not the same. And again, that is okay and happens often. Change also may involve feeling of loss. Is anybody think of ways, and you can put in the chat, where people may perceive a change as a loss? What is it that they may be thinking that they're losing with a change? Any ideas? Familiarity, yeah. Their existing knowledge, yes. Their job. It's amazing how many people go to that point with any change. Lack of they may lose autonomy, control. Yeah, all good things. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that and what we can do to help people if they're thinking about a change as a loss. And then the last one, probably not a surprise to all of you, but change is constant. I hear sometimes from people that we work with, they'll say the phrase, and you may have heard this in your organizations, well, if we can just get through this change, we'll be okay. And it's not just this change. There are many changes that are happening and are going to continue to happen. And not just that it's constant, but the pace and complexity of change is also ever increasing. And so we need to equip ourselves with ways to help us be resilient and thrive in this environment. So how can we do that? I'm going to share with you a tie model. So thinking about those change fundamentals that I just shared with you, and this is also audience participation. What are things that we can do for ourselves and for others to help us with those change fundamentals? We're naturally wired to resist change. Different reactions to the same change may be grieving it, and change is constant. So the things that we can do start with each of these different letters. So starting with a T, what are things that you think you can do to help yourself and others through a change? All right, team, act as a team, talk it out, teach, yep. We can train them, all good things. Time management, yes, right. How do we make better use of the time? All right, those are all good. Take a time out, yep. Yeah, get together and support each other. All right, for our model, those are all good things. For the tie model, we use the word transparency. And a lot of times in change, the more transparent you are with yourself, being honest with yourself and others through the change, the more likely it is that people are going to be able to absorb and adopt the change. So I'll give you just a quick story or example, and something that I know that credit unions are also grappling with. So was working with an organization that had recently gone through a merger and an acquisition. So was working with 4 leaders in that organization, and they were bringing 2 groups together, and they knew that there was going to be job loss at the end of the integration and the merger. Just because of duplicative roles. And I had shared with the leaders that the more transparent you are with your teams, the better, and encourage you to share what you know when you know it. So one leader was willing to do that and did that with her team, and the other 3 were nervous to share about that outcome with their teams. And the one leader who shared was the only team where she didn't lose any of her team members throughout their integration and transition. And part of the reason for that is because she was open and honest with them. They reciprocated and were open and honest with her. They shared when they were looking for jobs or when they had interviews or even when they got offers, and they said, okay, do you know if I'm going to be impacted or not? Maybe I can push off my hire date to make sure that I'm here for the end of the integration. So just one example, but really encourage you to be as transparent as you can. All right, next, the I. What do you think that I stands for? What are things that we can do to help with those change fundamentals that start with an I? Involved, yes, involve people in the change, throughout the change. Inform, yeah, make sure that they have the information they need to make their own decisions about the change or give them some control back. Inclusion, yeah. Great. Those are all great things. And in our model, thank you, Meg. Yeah, we talk about inclusion. And a lot of times, people just want to be able to be included and take some of that control back. And so the more that you include them in the change and decision making, the better. I share with leaders, even if it's just a small thing. So, for example, a lot of organizations continue to grapple with the decision in terms of hybrid work, what works for their team. And we've seen organizations who have basically told their teams, well, this is what it's going to be, and they feel a lot of resistance. And another organization we worked with, they said, we really want people to be in 3 days during the week, but we'll let you decide which of those 3 days you come to the office. So it gives them, and that was based on conversation that they had had with team members. So they had included them along the way to say, okay, this is the outcome we want. What is the best way that we can implement this to give this a soft landing, so to speak? And so they had shared, well, I think if I have more of a decision in terms of what days I come in, I'll be more willing to adopt it. All right, and then finally, the E for the model. What do you think that E may be to help us with those change fundamentals? Oh, lots of E's. Great. Okay. Educate, empower, embrace, execute, all great ones. Yes. Educate people, make sure that they have the information that they need and the skills they need. You embrace it yourself, the change. Make sure that you are able to be excited about the change. Uh, Execute, say what you're going to do, and make sure that you follow through. Take the time to explain to folks. Yeah, all good things to help with those fundamentals. Thank you all. For our model, we use the E for empathy. And we've learned that sometimes in change, you yourself or others just want to be heard. So make sure that you're expressing empathy or being empathetic uh, to others within the organization that are going through the change, especially if they are experiencing the change a little bit differently than you may be. It's also okay to say, I don't know, when they ask you questions, but I'll follow up. That's part of just acknowledging that they have a concern and making sure that those things are addressed moving forward. All right, thank you. So that's our time model and things to think about. One other concept that you may have heard about is the change curve. And so this is an individual change curve. This is one of the most downloaded pieces of content from our site. And I think because it really resonates with individuals in terms of things that they are experiencing in terms of their emotional response to change. And a few things I'd like to call out about the change curve. So first, this is directly related to one of those change fundamentals when you are thinking about a change as a loss. You may be grieving something, and you guys gave some examples in terms of what you may be grieving. You may be going through this curve, and it's adapted from the Kubler-Ross grief curve, if any of you are familiar with that curve. Uh, and these are the stages of grief that you may be going through. So just to call out a couple of other things too is this isn't necessarily a left to right curve. You may, after you initially hear a change, be shocked about the change and then a little bit sad or depressed about having to move to a new system, or maybe it's a new job or role or team, a restructure that has happened, but you eventually move and get to experimentation. But let's say if it's a new system, you start to use the new system and you discover, oh boy, this process is maybe going to take me a little bit longer than the old way that I did it. And so you move backwards in the curve and may then get to frustration again. So you may move back and forth with the curve. The other thing to call out is you may not necessarily go through all of these different stages. You may jump from shock to experimentation or start at frustration or depression. So you don't have to go through all of the different phases, or you might not necessarily even view the change as a loss. So you may not go through the curve. And then the last thing I'll share is I think this curve is very powerful to help start a conversation, to have that transparency and inclusion between yourself and other people that may be going through a change, where you can be genuine and authentic and share where you are on the change curve, or even maybe where you've been with others who are going through the change. And then it helps give them license or feel more comfortable for them to share with you where they are. And if you know where they are in the change curve, then you can figure out together what you can do to help support each other to move through the curve. So to expand on that a little bit more, we have this individual perspective. And what I like about this visual is it helps you look at the change curve from two different lenses. One is you can view this as one individual who is experiencing four different changes at the same time and how they may be experiencing those four different changes. So that green little curve, one change, if they are moving to a new job or role, they may be very excited about that, but there may be other changes happening within the organization, a new process or automation or leveraging AI, that they're that red curve where they're experimenting with it, but the more they experiment, the roller coaster aspect of it. So that's one lens. Another may be you can look at this as one change that you're going through and four different individuals where they are in their change curve with that one change. So you can leverage maybe one person on a team that you're working on that is the green curve that can be a change agent because they've already moved through the curve and they're excited about it, and leverage them to help the others who may be on those other change curves, if that makes sense, to help them through it. So wanted to share with you, since we had shared this concept, if you would like to use that change curve or think it may be valuable in just conversations within your team, or even just for you yourself, as you're experiencing a change, here's a QR code that you can leverage to help download it to use that. So now that we've talked about the change landscape a little bit, I'd like to shift now to understanding resistance a little bit more and what we can do to help ourselves and others when we feel ourselves resist change. So first, would like to ask a question. So you can either put it in the chat or feel free to come off of mute if you'd like to share. Why do you think people resist change? Fear. Yes, we are afraid of the unknown. Yeah. Yes, creatures of habit. Yes, we love our comforts, don't we? Yes, it feels comfortable. We feel like we have expertise in it. Yes, creates disruption of a routine. Absolutely. Yes, it can create anxiety. There's definitely, because I think of the environment that we're in, uh, there are studies that are showing more and more of us are feeling anxiety and needed to get help for the anxiety. And I think a lot of that has to do just with the level and scope of change that we're having to absorb. Yep, we don't know the end results. How is it going to end up? Yeah, that level of certainty. Great. Thank you all for sharing that. So yeah, those are all aspects of it, and we'll cover just a few here in terms of understanding a little bit more about resistance and why we may resist. One aspect in why we resist is that we just don't understand the why behind the change. So what is the ultimate vision or goal for where we want to go? Is there a business case? We see this a lot in organizations that we work with, is that the leadership, they know and they understand why they're making a change, but they haven't necessarily shared that with the broader employee population. So let's say that they're deciding to stop a certain service. We're not going to offer that loan anymore. And your employees feel like it's very popular with your membership, but the leaders realize that, well, it's the business case isn't there. We're not making money on it. And if we continue to offer it, then we're going to have other impacts. So things like that, the more that you can either share where you're going, the vision or goal for the future, or some of the benefits of the change, the more likely people won't resist it. Next is poorly managed changes. So I'm sure you can all think in your head of a change that you've gone through where you felt like, oh boy, they just didn't handle that well, whoever was embarking upon the change. It could be within your organization, or it could be just going to the store or different other vendors that you experience. So it could be poor communication. Sometimes you may be using an app on social media and they'll make a change and they don't really communicate the change, and you're just supposed to understand and figure out, wait, they just changed something and I have to use it differently. There may be unrealistic timelines. We've had that situation in organizations we've worked with where they were planning in the fall. It was their busiest time of year, and they were implementing for their member services area a whole new phone system and a new application for recording their notes on member calls at the same time, the month before their busiest season. And that was just unrealistic in terms of getting that all done with everything else that had to happen. There may be a lack of resources. So do you have what subject matter experts in the change to help everyone else through the change? And then a lack of trust and confidence. So sometimes as you're going through a change, people distrust that the reason that you've shared for the change is actually the reason for making the change because of other reasons. And then fear of loss. So you all had shared that earlier when we talked about the change fundamentals, and here are just some of those for all of you. A lot of you had mentioned that, you like being comfortable. There may be a fear of loss of culture. I know in a lot of credit unions, they're very proud of their culture and the environment that they create. And so sometimes they view the change may impact the culture, view of autonomy or status that you may have, decisions. So do I still have the authority to make the same level of decisions for myself and others that I did before? Some of you had shared the fear of job loss. Absolutely. That's a fear. Fear of loss of either coworkers or a manager that you're working with. And then that last one, competency. So we feel that we have become experts, or we really know what we're doing, and the change may make us have to move back in terms of our comfort level. So it's helpful for us to understand there are numerous reasons why we may be resisting change. And so the more that we can dive in and have that conversation with ourselves in terms of, so why am I resisting that? Will help us then be able to address that resistance and get the support that we need in order to adopt it. Now let's dig in to actual steps that we can do to help manage ourselves through change. So we'll start with this visual. Why do you think we share this visual when we're talking about managing ourselves through change? Yes, just breathe. Yep, it is that if any of you have been on a plane, and if you still pay attention to that first 5 minutes where the flight attendants are talking through the safety features, they talk about making sure that you help yourself and you put the mask around yourself before you help others. And it's very similar when we talk about change and deal with change, is that you need to understand how you yourself are responding to change and getting yourself through that change curve before you can be effective at helping others through change. So that's why we're going to focus on managing yourself first. So we're going to highlight 4 key activities to help manage yourself. This is not an exhaustive list, I acknowledge that, but 4 things that are relatively simple just to help you think through as you're going through a change. So first and foremost is self-reflecting. And as we self-reflect, something that may be helpful is to understand the concept of sphere of control. So I don't know how many of you have heard of this before now. So we define the sphere of control as representing the aspects of a situation or a change that you have direct power or autonomy over. And that could be things like your attitude, your effort, and how you choose to respond to a change. So first, try and identify those aspects of the change that fall within your control. So your thoughts and emotions could be one aspect. So how you choose to perceive a situation will impact your emotional response to it. The choices you make in response to the change, including your own communication style, and whether or not you lean in and are willing to kind of problem solve. How much time you decide to take with the change. So, can you spend more time practicing with a new system or going to training to upskill in something that you're expected to do as part of your role? Could be all aspects of things that are within your control. Then you move to thinking about, well, if it's not within my direct control, where do I maybe have some spheres of influence? What can I influence? Can I talk to individuals who maybe have more control and at least share with them my perspectives? Or can I give them some information that I know they may not have, but I have in this particular change? And then finally, it's everything else. Uh, it's including accepting what you cannot control here. And so if you recognize things that are beyond your control or beyond your influence, then you don't have to waste your energy, your focus, your time on those things. And that can be very freeing when it comes to how you manage yourself through change. We talked about resistance to change, and there are things too in this self-reflect aspect where we have some questions that you can have a conversation with yourself to help you figure out where you may be. So first, you see up there, here's some questions that you can ask yourself. What is getting me stuck about this change, and why am I stuck? It's getting to maybe some of those root causes. Is there anything that I'm holding on to? And what can I do to help me not have to hold on to those? This next one actually has been really helpful to me personally, where I had a shift in responsibility with a team. They gave me additional team members, and I felt myself really resisting it. And at first I thought, wow, I should be exciting that I'm getting this new team. But have I really thought and talked to myself about how it's impacting me professionally and personally, and realized that part of it was a global nature to the team. And I realized I was resisting it because I was nervous about my work-life balance or harmony now that that team was coming on board. And how could I get control back in terms of addressing that aspect of my own resistance? And then the last thing is, are there things that are unrelated to the change that could be getting in your way? Uh, if you think all the way back, not that far, but to the beginning of this webinar together, when we had talked about you being fatigued, sometimes our own ability to respond and absorb change is because of how much other change. It's not this change, but it's everything else that we're having to absorb. So, I'll just share something personal too. I recently was in a head-on car accident at the beginning of January, and was just dealing with a lot of personal health issues in terms of responding to broken ribs and lack of focus and pain with that. Well, because I was dealing with that change in my life, it made it very difficult on the professional level when there were things that were happening. I felt myself act and react and resist more. And I think it was just because there was so much going on that I could only absorb so much at a time. And my team was wonderful and grateful and helpful, and acknowledged, because I was going through all those things personally, that maybe we could slow roll some of the other things that were happening professionally due to that. And then, so you can ask yourself, and then ask about the change. So engage with the change equip yourself, learn more about the change, and then ask, what can you not like about or what don't you like about the change? But also, what do you like about it? What can you anchor to? What can help you change your attitude about the change? And then what are risks of not changing as well as benefits of the change? So if that's not being shared with you, can you identify that for yourself to help you with the resistance? Yes, thank you for your, sorry to hear about that. I'm doing fine now. On the road to recovery, but for anyone else who's been through that, I salute you because it is definitely a journey. All right. Next, managing yourself through change is, we just call it give yourself a break. So you may be feeling like this young woman in the picture where it's just feeling so overwhelming, all the different change, and you really don't like what we are asking you to do. But I want to share this important distinction to make for yourself when it comes to change. You can accept a change even if you don't like it. And once you accept it, it is far easier for you to help yourself and others to accept it. You know, it's kind of that mask analogy. So just a few other notes about this is accepting change means recognizing that it's a reality, even if it's unwanted or uncomfortable. So acceptance is helping you to face the reality of the change. And then that helps you be able to move forward with the change. Resistance leads to frustration and stagnation, and acceptance helps you be able to take steps forward as well. And then just finally, it's a path to resilience. If you are willing to accept it, even if you don't like it, it teaches you to manage discomfort without avoiding it. So hopefully all of that makes sense. It is, however, when you give yourself a break, important to hold yourself accountable during change. So, as you think about this, make sure that you're setting those clear intentions and define what accepting change means for you. You know, what does moving forward look like for you? And then regularly ask yourself, can I let this go? Is holding on still serving me and my purpose? And then, will I let this go? Am I actually willing to release it to make progress? And finally, when will I let this go? So hopefully you can set a realistic but firm timeline in terms of when you think you'll be able to do that. I know there are some people who are, it's a busy time of year in May, end of school year things, all of that stuff. So maybe you find yourselves resisting change. And so maybe you can say, you know what, once I get through the end of the school year, I feel like I'll have more time to be able to engage with this change. And that's when I will be able to accept it. And then finally, get a supportive accountability buddy. So someone that you trust, share your intentions and maybe even questions you have with someone who can keep you honest and grounded and help you with the change. All right, next, seek a proactive approach. So this is all about getting yourself involved in any way you can. So we talked about the tie model. You know, if you're somebody who's helping to lead a change to make sure that you're being inclusive, this is flipping it. And if you're somebody who is you're being impacted by a change, take some of that control back. So increase your sphere of control. Sometimes people don't even realize that they have more control. Well, you don't know if you don't ask. So get yourself involved. Raise your hand, ask questions, volunteer, educate yourself on anything. Google it or use AI to think of things. Just engage more with the change. I guarantee it will help you with being able to accept it and to move through that change curve a lot more quickly. And then finally, assume positive intent. Again, I see this a lot working with organizations that are going through a lot of different changes. And we work with both the leaders who are implementing the change or triggering the change within their organizations, as well as the teams that are impacted by the change. And there's just a lot of disconnect between the two. And so we try and coach both the leaders to implement the tie model, which helps their team. But if they don't do that, we also work with the team and encourage them to give their leaders some grace and assume positive intent, that they aren't making this change just to make your life more miserable. They're not sitting in a room saying to themselves, what decision or change can I make that will make our people the most unhappy? On the opposite, they really most times have the best of intentions with the change. And so it helps you with your own management of the change if you assume that that's what they intended. Sometimes it doesn't always come out that way, but that's when you can help raise your hand or engage in a dialogue and share with them, hey, I assume you meant this to be a good thing, but I want you to realize that we're struggling and here's why we're struggling, to help us move forward. So we can really conserve some of that emotional energy that we're spending if we recognize that others are making decisions with that positive intent. All right, quickly before we move to leading through others, the last part, and then some Q&A, I would love for you all to share in the chat, what are some other methods that you have used to help manage yourself through change? I just shared those four areas or aspects, but there are many others and would love for you to kind of crowdsource with each other to help. Yes, right. Be positive, right? Shift that mindset, breathe. Yeah, there's a lot of wellness aspects that you can do. Yeah, prepare yourself, be patient. Yeah. Yeah, manage it in small aspects, small pieces. This is great. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to shift to how can you help others through change? And same thing, we're going to give you kind of four different aspects. These aren't the only four things that you can do, but hopefully you'll take a nugget from these four. So we talked about being transparent and intentionally communicating. And one thing that may help you in the way that you communicate is this concept of the 4 Bs. Be brave, be thoughtful, be consistent, and be flexible. So just a little bit more about each one in terms of be brave. Don't avoid the hard information. Sometimes leaders are nervous that they're sharing bad news. I will tell you that people's negative fantasies are so much worse than the bad news that you think you're sharing with them. Anyway, that when it's happening, you build that trust if you're willing to be brave and share, even though you know it may be uncomfortable. Be thoughtful. So, share relevant information and also tailor the message. So take a little bit of time in terms of what words you use. Words do matter as you're sharing with your team. Be consistent. If you can, it's helpful to share regular and timely updates with your team. It's also okay if you don't have an update to share just that. Again, if you go silent, team members will fill the void with their own information. So at least have some regular consistency to when you share things, and make sure you follow through on promises that you make along the way. Oop. And then last but not least, be flexible. Keep communication frequent. And if you do engage in that feedback loop, make sure that you're willing to change your direction based on the feedback that you're getting with your teams. All right, we talked earlier about giving yourself a break. When you're dealing with teams, you want to make sure that you're giving them a break. And so I was talking with some folks earlier. I'm heading out to go to a baseball park. So baseball is always top of mind for me, but I like the pitcher catcher analogy. So sometimes as a leader, we're the pitchers on a mound. We're creating the change by sending the pitch. The catcher are the people who are having to absorb the change. And sometimes we as leaders have 5 different pitchers on the mound and are sending those pitches to the catcher at the same time. And we're not giving them a break, or we're pitching repeatedly where they barely have a chance to catch one ball and get that ball out of their glove to set themselves up for the next catch. And so it's just having that awareness as you're implementing change in terms of how much can your team absorb. And so give them a break along the way. Encourage learning and failing. This is one where that fear people have that we talked about earlier, they have this fear of failure. So the more that you can encourage them to experiment, even if it means that they may fail, to celebrate failure can absolutely be helpful as you're leading others through change. So here are just some ideas for you in terms of that aspect, where you recognize and support as their struggle, give them more opportunities to practice. Either if they're learning a new skill, say, hey, do you want to model it with me first before we take it to one of our credit union members? Happy to do that. Make sure that you define, what does success look like? So they have those guideposts. And then celebrate both the wins, but also if somebody failed, but it's okay that they failed because they implemented the change that you wanted them to implement. And we're going to fail along the way. It's part of that learning curve. And then continue to hold yourself and each other accountable along the way. And then finally, don't assume how people are responding to a change. Everybody, I have a horrible poker face, so a lot of times people see how I may be reacting to a change, but you all may realize this within your teams. Either they're more quiet in nature or they're very stoic. And so you may not know how they're responding to a change. So it's very important to understand that. Share this slide in terms of when we talk about a change, this is the typical makeup of how a team may respond to it. You typically have about half of your team who are the fence sitters. They're not sure how to engage with the change. They're waiting to see how it plays out. You'll have those 20% who are willing to be the early adopters and are excited, so you can leverage them for the rest of the team. And then you have those 30% who are really resisting. They're actively resisting the change. So 80% aren't on board, and you need to understand that in terms of who they are and how you can help them through the change. The other thing about don't assume just because somebody is having a particular resistance to one change, that they are that type of person for every change. Don't label them as resistors or skeptics. They may be a resistant about a certain change or a skeptic about a certain change. And here are some of the aspects that you can try to suss out whether or not they are in those aspects of it, and what you can do then to help support them along the way. All right, And then one final question for all of you. What other skills have you used or developed to help your teams through change? Again, I just gave kind of a small subset to share with all of you today, but are there other things that you've done that you've really found powerful and effective with your teams to help them? Lead by
I I've
example. Yes,
I've found
modeling the
that
way is great. Oh, I have somebody who came off mute. So exciting. Go for it.
I did, yes. I have found that jumping in and going through the change with them is helpful. Almost like model it first and then, show them it's not going to be so bad. We just have to work through it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming off of mute and sharing that. Right. Showing that you're willing to do the change, what you're asking them to do, you're willing to do it. And then they can see you go through the change curve. It's okay to share with the team that you also were shocked or upset about the change, and that by actually trying it, it helped you get through your own curve. Yep, some of the others here. Share your personal experience. Make sure you understand the why. Yeah, share your positive attitude and excitement about the change. Um, yeah, tips and tricks that you've learned along the way. Those are all great things. Keep them coming. Uh, that's awesome. All right, I'm going to end on this quote. So it's not the strongest of the species nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that is the most adaptable to change. Thank you, Darwin. So a lot of us know Darwin's survival of the fittest. And I love this nuance to it because it is being more adaptable, and hopefully all of you, through spending this time together, at least have one other aspect that you can incorporate so that you can become more adaptable yourself, and thus can help the rest of the teams that you lead or are part of be more adaptable to change. So thank you. I have here at first, if you'd like to connect, I'm on LinkedIn. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about FarWell, there's also some information there. I'm happy to connect and geek out about change. I spend way too much time talking about it, but please reach out. Would love to hear more of your stories, or any way we can help. And then any questions that you have for me.
If anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat and we can read them, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly of Rachel. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming through. Rachel, thank you again for sharing this information. If anyone has any questions and they didn't get a chance to capture Rachel's information, please feel free to reach out to myself or Amanda, and we can put you in touch with her. Again, thank you, Rachel. Thank you to FarWell for sharing this presentation with us. And that will wrap up today's session. Thank you. Enjoy the rest
Thanks
of your day.
all.